And I'd like to say just a few words about one of the latest military developments in the new Cold War and what the peace movement is doing about it. And I hope we'll be able to explore further ways of cooperating together on this question. Earlier this year, the British government announced a massive increase in its nuclear arsenal. Then it went on to send a heavily armed naval flotilla to the South China Sea to underpin its new tilt to the Indo-Pacific. Then in June, it played a big part at the NATO summit in backing the US in NATO's strategic anti-China turn. As if all that wasn't bad enough, now the Johnson government has announced the new AUKUS military agreement between the US, UK and Australia. Australia has a lot to lose from this agreement. China is its biggest trading partner. And up to recently, Australia has avoided getting too sucked into US strategies against China. Earlier attempts during the Bush presidency to build a quad against China with Australia, Japan and India foundered when Kevin Rudd withdrew Australian support. But now Australia is back in the fold. So what is this new military deal? Well, it's described by the signatories as a, quote, landmark defence and security partnership. And it's being sold as a values-driven agreement to support a peaceful, rules-based international order. Now, of course, we all recognise that has been US and UK rhetoric for some time now, even when the US was unilaterally withdrawing from the fundamental pillars of this supposed order. And of course, now it's an approach that's embraced by NATO. But the key military focus of AUKUS centres on the development of joint capabilities and technology sharing, deeper integration of security and defence-related science, technology, industrial bases and supply chains. In other words, a massive intensification of militarisation. And at the core of this, there is the agreement that the US and UK are going to collaborate with Australia to provide them with nuclear-powered submarines. Now, bizarrely, the joint government statement, which announced the deal, says that this will promote stability in the Indo-Pacific region. I'm not quite sure how they arrive at that, because to me, it looks far more likely to massively ramp up tension in the region at a time when cooperation with China, particularly in the run-up to COP26, to deal with the climate emergency should be top of the agenda. Not surprisingly, the Chinese government hasn't responded well to this. And it's clear that whatever the issues that went on about having previously had a contract with France and so on, this is not a military industrial decision about the quality of submarines. It's a strategic one. It's about Australia fully entering the US orbit and therefore being granted access to rare nuclear reactor technology. Nuclear, whether it's military or civilian, is always controversial and symbolic. And here it means Australian admission to the top-level club. Only 6 countries, all nuclear weapon states, have nuclear-powered submarines. And it's also an indication by the US of the priority that it gives to this growing conflict and its determination to get Australia on side with the US in the Cold War and to keep it there. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was announcing the new pact in the British Parliament, and he said that the AUKUS deal did not contravene the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is opposed to spreading of nuclear weapons technology and so on. And he claimed this because he said the nuclear subs have nuclear power, not nuclear weapons, so that the restrictions don't apply. But the fact is that the US and UK nuclear reactors in the submarines are powered with weapons-grade, highly enriched uranium. And providing this to a non-nuclear weapons state for military submarines undertaking provocative action in a very fraught area of the world. That is just a disaster. And of course, it is against the treaty, because although the treaty doesn't stop the exchange of civil nuclear technology, it stipulates it must be for peaceful purposes. So sending warfighting subs to a potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific region is definitely not peaceful. So to round up, Nora, just to say a little bit about the opposition to conclude, the good news, of course, is that the pact has triggered opposition here in Britain in a way that other developments in anti-China policy haven't. So at the recent annual conference of the Labour Party, Labour's CND's Labour section put in an emergency motion against AUKUS, which was passed by over 70% of the vote. And within that vote, 77% of the trade union votes were opposed to AUKUS. And this is a really important step for the trade unions in relation to the new Cold War, and we're working to build this trade union opposition. And of course, I'm sure you will all know that in Australia, there's been vocal trade union opposition, with the Maritime Union of Australia issuing a strong statement too. And cooperation is building now between the peace movements and trade unions internationally to oppose this dangerous development. And here in Britain, members of Parliament are starting to organise against it. This week, Early Day Motion 493 was published, and we're urging our members and supporters to lobby their MPs to back that motion. So there's much work to do as the US and NATO intensify their hostility to China and attempt to build alliances against China. But the overwhelming majority which supports peace and opposes war and intervention is also mobilizing. And we will be working in unity and solidarity to intensify this mobilization in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.